This is a comment I received on my first video speaking German. Do you think it's a compliment or not? Wow, this is quite good. If you think it's a straightforward answer, it's not. Well, not quite. You see, English is full of words that quietly flip meaning when you cross the Atlantic. Words that you think sound polite or a compliment, like this one, can really land you in hot water if you use them across the pond, including one word that American pilots use all the time that can make British passengers feel like something has gone horribly wrong with their flight. My name is Edinger, and these are the English words that mean the complete opposite in the US and the UK. Take a look at this graph. It shows how British people rate common phrases on a scale of 1 to 10. At the bottom, you've got abysmal and appalling. Well, for some reason that's at the top of this list, but regardless, at the top, perfect and outstanding. The really interesting parts lie in the middle. The average British person rates the word good at a 6.92 out of 10, but when it comes to quite good, that's lower at a 6.48. So if a Brit says something is quite good, that means it's literally worse than good. This is quite the opposite of how Americans would use the word quite. When asked to rank these same words, Americans nearly always rate things higher than Brits, except when it comes to the highest rankings. When Brits say something is excellent, that really is high praise. They pretty much don't use their most positive words unless they really mean it. Americans are more, well, glass half full type of people, I suppose. When it comes to the expression quite good, for Americans, it is in fact higher than good. And that clocks. So American quite and British quite are quite the opposite. Quite in the US is used as an intensifier. It takes the original word and steps it up a notch. In the UK, quite dampens it a bit. Quite can be more or less replaced in the UK with the word fairly. Saying it's quite good is like saying it's fairly good, but as you probably guessed if you've watched a few videos about words on this YouTube channel, it wasn't always like this. You see, the adverb quite entered the English language from Anglo-Norman around the 1300s, meaning entirely. Over time, it evolved to mean truly or definitely, and by the 18th century, both American speakers of English and British used the word in the same way. But through the course of the 19th and the 20th centuries, quite took quite a turn in Britain, changing from the emphatic intensifier, meaning completely and truly, to the more understated qualifier we know of today. Like most things about the English, they do love being understated when expressing themselves, as the data from this graph does show. Why say something is really good when you can just dampen it a little bit? And to be fair, in both countries, the tone of the sentence plays a huge role here. The more your inflection goes up, the more intense that quite is perceived. Oh, how's your food? That's quite good. It's quite good. This is quite good. It's quite good! In terms of the original comment, the wow at the start might point us towards quite being used as an intensifier, more the American way. Wow, that's quite good. But with these two comments, quite lowers your expectations a bit, most likely because, well, they're British, we'll see. To be fair, Sheffield public transport is quite good. That's quite good for an American. See, it sounds more like they're saying, Sheffield's public transit is fairly good. It's not bad at Sheffield, and that's fairly good for an American. See, even that, you could just tell from picking up the rest of the sentence. You might think that this is just a minor difference, but with all due respect, these next words are where the differences stop being subtle and start getting risky. So I was watching the new season of Stranger Things and came across this interesting segment. Pay attention to the tone in the following clip.
Major General, with all due respect, these kids are in danger.
With all due respect. Okay. So does he respect her or does he not? Americans watching are probably confused why this is even a question, and Brits are, well, laughing and shaking their heads. I've lived in this country for over 13 years, and I've only found out this year Brits do not mean this when they say it. When an American says, with all due respect, it's usually just a polite way to pat out some criticism. With all due respect, I think we should do it this way instead. Basically, I respect you. I do. But I do disagree with you in this instance. In Britain, they say the same words, with all due respect, but the implication is that they actually don't respect you or your opinion at all. The amount of respect that you're due, that's in question. With the respect you're due, which of course is nothing, I think your idea is a bit It's basically what they're saying. It's the most polite way a Brit has to say they think you're a complete idiot, akin to signing an email with kindest regards. My friends, the regards were not kind at all. If you ever get an email from a Brit with both with all due respect, or maybe as per my last email, and or kindest regards, mate, assume that they've complained about you to the entire office. In fact, this is also quite similar to another expression Brits and Americans interpret very differently. If we're having a conversation and you say something to me like, Evan, you should remind people to thumbs up your video more often, and I reply with, thanks, I'll bear that in mind. What exactly am I saying? Am I saying, I will consider that and I might do it? Or am I politely dismissing your comment that I have no plan on acting on? It turns out which side of the Atlantic you're on strongly plays a role here. In another YouGov poll of around 2,000 British and 2,000 American adults, 55% of Brits interpreted "I'll bear that in mind" with I've forgotten it already. Whew, compared to only 38% of Americans. Though diving deeper into the data, it would appear that Americans in the Northeast are significantly more likely to share the British stance. I think that makes sense, actually. But overall, American culture prioritizes direct communication. If they like your idea, an American will probably tell you. Same as if they dislike it. You'll know. As a lot of British culture emphasizes indirectness and not causing offense, expressions like, "I'll bear that in mind," act as a polite way of refusing an idea without outright saying it to soften the blow. It's basically like a British person saying they'd like to table that discussion. The issue here is that that previous sentence that I just said outright confused a lot of Brits in my audience who were mostly agreeing with me up until that point. Yes, it is a polite no, but I'm absolutely of no interest in tabling the discussion. You see, but I was using the American version of the expression. This is one expression that causes a lot of confusion in international meetings. In British English, to table a motion or an issue means to bring it forward for discussion. For instance, if an item is tabled in Parliament, well, it has been figuratively put on the table to be addressed immediately. The way I've always heard it in the US is more like, let's just table that and focus on something more important. Sort of like we're all actively discussing really important things with higher priority, and we can just leave the unimportant things on the table. In both houses of the United States Congress, the motion to table is used to kill a motion without debate or further discussion. Quite interesting that both countries, like political bodies, have the same word that means quite literally the very opposite. It's quite literally the difference between, well, let's talk about this immediately. It's really important. And let's never speak of this again. In one of his books, Winston Churchill documented this difference quite well as it happened during World War II. Thankfully, I got a recording of the real Winston Churchill reading this for you today. Definitely not another YouTuber. Hit it for me, Winston.
The enjoyment of a common language was, of course, a supreme advantage in all British and American discussions. The delays and often partial misunderstandings which occur when interpreters are used were avoided. There were, however, differences of expression, which in the early days led to an amusing incident. The British staff prepared a paper which they wished to raise as a matter of urgency and informed their American colleagues that they wished to table it. To the American staff, tabling a paper meant putting it away in a drawer and forgetting it. A long and even acrimonious argument ensued before both parties realized that they were agreed on the merits and wanted the same thing.
And there is an interesting historical reason for this split in meaning. Usage of the term table in this way has been used in England since at least the 17th century, but the American version most likely evolved from the US parliamentary procedure developed by US Army officer Henry M. Robert for his book, Robert's Rules of Order, published in 1876. Robert published this book as a guide for conducting meetings and making decisions as a group, no matter the size, and it has been used extensively by Congress. Robert initially wrote that to lay a motion on the table means something else more urgent has come up for discussion that should be prioritized. Eventually, you were meant to take from the table and continue discussion of that motion. But over time, the verb table began to be used in the same way as to postpone or kill a motion. Further books on US parliamentary procedure solidified this misuse of the term to the point where it's now just a common expression. And as is the case in many of these interesting word differences, Canada, America's hat, they often get wrapped up in the middle, where table takes the British definition in parliamentary proceedings and, well, the American definition in everyday life. That must be fun. But this is a video about British versus American things, right? Whether or not Canada is important to this discussion or not, well, that's a moot point. Oh god, this is another one, isn't it? Yeah, originally the term moot point was one that might be argued in a moot, which was an Anglo-Saxon assembly or a court. This meaning has mostly persisted in modern British English. So when a Brit says something is moot, they mean it's debatable or, can be argued either way. It's a moot point. I think we should still debate it, possibly. On the other hand, in American English, a moot point is usually something completely irrelevant for discussion, often because the opportunity to act on it has passed. Like, what route we choose to get home today is kind of irrelevant. It's a moot point. We're already home. There's no use debating it anymore. So how did the term split so severely? Well, often an important part of law school is arguing hypothetical cases in a moot court for practice. It's similar to a mock trial. So a moot point would be a point brought up in a moot court. During the 19th century, in America specifically, this evolved more to focus on the hypothetical nature of the moot point. It's not actually up for debate, it's in a moot court. I mean, it's purely academic at this point. Think of it like, courts actually debate things that matter and can affect laws. Moot courts, it's like for students. They just debate scenarios as learning exercises. So points brought up there, they're not really relevant. They're moot points. Even the highest court in the USA, the Supreme Court, has ruled that a moot question has no bearing on an issue. And I guess no matter how you look at it, which definition of the expression is better is a moot point. Best to be debated by a group of... Oh, I guess it depends on what you call this next word. Actually, I think I need to choose my next word very carefully for the Americans to understand. Let me explain. After my girlfriend and I had been dating for a few months, I decided to give my mom a call, tell her the good news. Your boy's in a relationship! And one of the first questions she asked was, what does your girlfriend do for a living? To which I replied, well, Mom, she's a solicitor. Here's where things went south, because at this point, I really had to add a lot of explanation to my mom's utter confusion. No, Mom, no. She's really smart. Which was honestly like digging a hole at this point, because to my mother's more American ears, what I basically said to her was, Mom, I'm dating a door-to-door saleswoman or a prostitute. Don't worry, she's a smart one.
More solicitors come to your door every summer, and each time you hear a knock, you may be looking for a way to kind of steer clear of them.
Solicit is a word in America used for very dodgy things. Dealers solicit drugs, prostitutes solicit sex, and people get charged with soliciting murder. These are the signs that you'll often find on front doors in America. No solicitors! But that's not even anything to do with the previous group, because, well, that's more the word solicit, but solicitor is a catch-all for anyone who solicits for a living, usually by going door to door to solicit money from you, donations, political support, religious, commercial reasons. Basically, it's everything that you'd hate to hear your son's new girlfriend is involved in. Do I have to ask my mom to remove her no solicitor sign now from the front porch? God, how am I supposed to bring my girlfriend around? Even Dublin is against solicitors. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Dublin, Ohio. In reality, a solicitor is quite a prestigious job in the UK. They're a qualified legal professional who provides specialist legal advice on different areas of law and is responsible for representing a client's legal interests. That might seem like quite a lot of words to say lawyer, but the thing is, the term lawyer in the UK isn't a protected title, meaning anyone working in any law-related role might be called a lawyer, whereas a solicitor is officially qualified to do so, and a barrister is similar to a solicitor, but they specialize in courtroom-facing matters and litigation. Basically, attorneys in the US are kind of like a mix between solicitors and barristers. They can do both there. In the 1500s, England had already started using the term solicitor to denote a specific class of legal practitioner, and later formalized that distinction with barrister. But in the US, they went with a system where all licensed attorneys can perform the functions of pleading in court and advising clients, so the generic terms lawyer and attorney at law became the standard there. Some older instances of the term solicitor have survived in the US, mostly in official capacities, like Solicitor General, which is the government's attorney in Supreme Court cases. In everyday American parlance, solicitor and lawyer are the professions on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And if you were to guess where an American solicitor was educated, door-to-door salesman type person, you'd probably picture a public school. But if you were to guess where a British solicitor was educated, solicitor, well, you'd probably picture somewhere more prestigious, somewhere like a public school. Oh God, here we go again. You see, in America, a public school is a school open to the public. I myself graduated from a public school. Public schools are government funded and are free to attend. It's the opposite of a private school, one in which you have to apply and pay to attend. In the UK, however, a public school bizarrely refers to an elite private boarding school attended by the wealthy, the most famous public school of which, where many UK politicians get their education, being Eton. The word state school is a term used here for what we'd call a public school in the States. State school, like what you have in the States. I guess that makes sense if you want to try and remember it that way. But where did the term public school even come from? Well, the term dates back to England in the 16th century to denote a school open to the public. That makes sense, right? Well, the public provided that they could pay for it or earn a scholarship. Anyone could go to a public school, or rather, any boy could go to a public school, provided he could afford it. Over time, a certain group of public schools began to be associated more with the elite class. Britain just loves a good class divide, so when the Public Schools Act of 1868 recognized a group of the top boys' schools and set them apart as public schools, the term had already strongly begun to be associated with the wealthy and the gentry, changing its meaning to more of a prestigious, independent private school. And if you're confused as to why the previous time I used that word I said prestigious, and that time I said prestigious, it's because my brain literally can't choose what American or British pronunciation to choose anytime I make a video these days. There's actually quite a bit more involved here that gets even more interesting, but I think I'll reserve that for an upcoming video. Subscribe and it should be in your feed momentarily. Well, in the American sense of the word, though sometimes YouTube algorithm does hit me with the British definition of the word. You see, this is that word that you might hear American pilots say towards the end of a flight.
We'll be momentarily landing in Phoenix, Arizona. We here at American Airlines would like to say, we're sorry.
To an American's ears, this simply means we'll be landing in the middle of a vast, empty desert in a moment. To a Brit, well, the pilot is saying we'll be landing for a moment. Very important distinction. As someone who has been on a flight where we touch down on the tarmac only for the pilot to give up on the landing, climb back around, and basically try again, I can tell you that landing momentarily in the British sense, it's not fun. The word momentarily has been used to mean for a moment since at least the 17th century, but in the US, the word slowly shifted in meaning in the 19th century to just mean soon. I'm landing momentarily, I'm landing soon, means the same thing. Unless you're British. Soon enough, someone might ask you, how was that new Evan Edinger video on words? And you could reply, not bad. What do you mean by that? Seriously, what do you mean by that? If you ask a lot of BuzzFeed-style websites or TikToks, they'll confidently tell you that the expression, not bad, actually means really good in British English. But I do think after living here for so long, that is overselling it. Not bad could mean good, but I'd say it mostly serves as another way for Brits to understate their feelings. Not bad can be anything greater than a 5 out of 10. If you ask a Brit how they are and they respond with, not bad, yourself, they're not showing their hand. They're pretty much just telling you, don't consider this anymore. Like, I'm fine, just, it's fine, all right? I'm fine. It's a way of them saying, how I am is no longer a concern, but not really worth discussing further. It fits into their hidden small talk code, which I might be making a future video about. In fact, looking at the data from that previous YouGov poll pretty much confirms this, with the average score of not bad being just above a 5 for Brits. So pretty much near quite good as well. And also it's the same for Americans. So consider this one quite debunked, with whichever definition of quite you prefer. The interesting thing is, for pretty much every word and expression we talked about today, the words are pronounced pretty similarly in the US and the UK, despite the fact they mean such opposite things. But there are still a few American pronunciations that I have that Brits do not enjoy, like how I pronounce these things here, and many more. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link that above. Otherwise, welcome to 2026. I hope you make it a great one. Thanks again for stopping by my channel, and hopefully I'll see you back here next Sunday. Goodbye. The interesting thing is, for every word and expression we talked about today, the words are pronounced pretty similarly in the US and the UK. Hello, Mary Poppins, mate.